This is a video I've been agonising over quite a lot, but playing and preparing the game with these figures has reminded me of something very important, and I think because it's important to me, I can't be unique. There must be other people that it might help or just strike a chord with, and maybe you feel a bit happier having seen it. But I want to be more serious than I am often, because it's a more serious topic than it is often. It explains why I game in the way I do, and it explains why I'm the sort of person that I am, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. I don't think that matters, you know. As like Popeye might have said, I am what I am. And you know, nature, nurture. Everything leads to where we are. George Harrison said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. In 1963, I was very young, and I was just playing with my friends one summer holiday, and I suddenly had what I now know to be a manic episode from what became rapid cycle bipolar disorder. At that time, I didn't know what it was. It terrified me. I internalised it. I kept it to myself. Who'd you tell? Big burly miners wandering down the street, all the thugs, and to be honest, I'm sure all the nutters around me where I lived had problems as well. They dealt with them by beating up anyone who was different. I dealt with them by playing with soldiers. So anyway, I dealt with that by not dealing with it. 1968 was the big pinnacle for me. It was the moment, on the one hand, that my life became plagued with horror, which has, to a greater or lesser extent, stayed with me ever since. But also the year, and it's the same event that brought me to a realization that I could combat the horror by playing with this very specific event. Now it'd be, I just started a new school, and I know it was 1968 historically, so it must have been August, September time, I think. I haven't checked it. The Soviet Union, as was, invaded Czechoslovakia. Now, I'm old enough to remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we were terrified. I remember my dad glued to the television, almost looking at his watch, waiting for the moment when either the Soviet Union would turn away from Cuba or they'd start firing nuclear missiles at each other. And as a young child, that was horrific. And led to misunderstandings of me about how the world worked. Anyway, the Soviet Union invade Czechoslovakia, tanks rolling down the street, big news, it's everywhere. Special lessons about it at school, which only served to exasperate me more because I wanted to get away. I couldn't, everywhere I turned, the thing that was scaring me was happening, and it was triggering these. Nobody told me what they were, nobody diagnosed it, so they were triggering this sort of manic, crazy, idiot clowning response, and doing irrational things up here to suicidally depressed with nobody to talk to. Well then, one night, and I've still got them over there. You'll see, if you look at the Paratrooper videos or Southern Games Club, you'll see these. I've got some 1950s and 1960s wooden farm buildings that we used on our toy farm. And I had, not with any great intent, I'd set up the farm on the kitchen table, and I was playing with, I think they must have been American infantry, airfigs, this scale, and they were defending the farm against my brother's Russian infantry. And as the news played this story, and as my head tried to cope with that reality, I began to feel that my playing out the game was helping. I was feeling better. The tensions were going. I had some tiny little bit of something I was in control of. So I started to do my own little campaign of what I thought would happen after the Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia, which was carry on into Western Europe. It's not what happened, but that's what I was frightened of. But I learned a valuable lesson there. I learned that playing made me feel better. And I began to apply that to everything. I didn't tell anybody. Being bullied at school, I didn't tell anybody. You didn't tell teachers, you didn't tell your friends if you had any. I'm not sure I had any. You didn't tell your parents. They just said you were soft. So I could go upstairs and I could escape into this weird world I'd created where bullying didn't exist. Or if it did exist, it was a big brute of a Timpo cowboy coming into my Timpo Western town, which was on a shelf. There's only 3 buildings and a saloon. But the baddie could, whoever tormented me or could come into town that day, and I, as the sheriff, could shoot him. Now, I'm not saying we should be shooting people, but I'm saying my imagination was able to eliminate the threat as I perceived it. And I talked to myself as I do, and I'm talking to myself now. There's nobody here. I don't know any of you are ever going to listen. I managed to stave off being bipolar. Even though I was rapid cycle bipolar throughout my life, I managed to hide it. And I hid it till probably, I suppose, the cracks began to show in 1996. I held on, dramatically held on, but by 2000, it had won. The battle was over. I had a breakdown. I had to leave my job that I loved, and suddenly I wasn't anything in my head. I'd been a teacher, and I really cared, and I don't want to, sort of be all soppy, but I could think of nothing better than having a class of kids for a year that you interact with and help to develop and help them to combat perhaps some of the problems that you've had. I was always a better maths teacher than an English teacher, and I put that down to the fact that I'm pretty good at English, my degree and things of an English background. I was hopeless at maths at school. I went on to be a leading maths teacher in the county as I got older, but at 10, 11, and I sort of understood more why the mathematical problems were an issue, where I sort of couldn't understand as much why the nouns, verbs and adjectives were an issue. I hope that makes sense. So this is all a precursor to what happens. So I'm losing everything. I'm going to be honest now. Like a lot of bipolar people, I then try and kill the demons. I always had. I'd have to be busy. I had to keep my brain busy. It was the only way to quell the demons. If the brain wasn't busy, things crept in that were terrifying. And when I was young, I would run miles. I'd fill rucksacks full of rocks and I'd run 12 miles after work. I remember once walking through chest-deep snow over the Pennines rather than catch the bus. Took about 5 hours, but that was preferable to going to an empty flat and living with this. So, after the job's gone, what have I got? Now, you'd think I'm going to say at this point, wargaming. No, because what I got next was drinking too much, which is what a lot of bipolar people do. I can't speak for other mental illnesses. I don't know. A lot of bipolar people quell the demon in a bottle. And I'm talking about a lot of bottle. I'm talking about 3 full bottles of brandy. I was shaking so much in the morning when I woke up that I had to have a mug full of brandy so that I could stop shaking enough to clean my teeth. And when I went cold turkey and withdrew, it was the most nightmarish thing I've ever done. I was lying in bed and I was sure I could feel cats' tails, more specifically kittens' tails, rubbing my hands. I kept getting out of bed and looking. I remember laying on the pavement outside the house on a freezing cold night, just to try and get cool and get rid of the sweats. And it's bad. Trust me, it's bad. If you have to go, don't do that. Don't go cold turkey. If you're ever in that situation, seek medical help. Because when I did seek medical help, they would give me a tablet and I was sorted. And they gave me, this is 2000, it's nearly 30 years ago. I don't know what happens now, so I can't talk on that. They gave me this tablet, and if you had a drink, it made you sick. So it stops you drinking. Now, you're thinking, well, good, that's the problem solved, isn't it? Yeah, if only. Because then I discovered drugs. I'm not proud of it. I'm not saying do it. I didn't take heavy stuff. And again, I did it to stop that working. I'm not proud of it. I'm not showing off. I'm telling you a fact. All of those things, the drinking and the recreational drug taking, shall we call it, I don't know what's recreational about it, bloody expensive, stopped me doing this. Because I'd lost sight that this won. It dragged me away from a wholesome, sensible solution, even Rolo was angry. He wasn't there. Into this weird stuff. And I'm going to say something else now that, again, you've got to be careful how you phrase things. But I'm just going to be honest. If you don't like it, you don't like it. And if you do like it, you do like it. And to be honest, I'm past caring, right? I believe in God. I'm not telling you what God. I'm a bit like, why give him another name? He's got lots. I know, because of what's happened in my life, that when I trust in something beyond me, my life gets better. There you go, that's it in a nutshell. I'm not quoting old chat here. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not saying do it. I'm not saying, just saying I have that facet of something else as well. Okay? Now, when I finally got medical help, there's the biggie, right? When I finally listened to people I cared about, I was unlucky because people I thought were friends either were ignorant of my condition, which is likely, didn't care, or took advantage. And I was taken advantage of either accidentally or on purpose by so-called friends. People I really thought I could trust. People I'd stepped over the line for and stood up to be counted. Either abandoned me or betrayed me in one way or another. Okay, fair enough. I forgive them. Fair enough. I've got a lot of people to forgive me. I'm not bothered about that. If I've hurt somebody, I know I have, and I'm sorry about it. I don't expect anyone to forgive me. That's not legit. That's not the game. But I forgive anything that anyone ever thinks they've ever done to me, because I know what a rotten swine I am. By the by, it's getting out, isn't it? So, finally, because of family and how on earth people stuck by me, where I've got 2 amazing kids, I've got a wife who's stuck by me for more than 50 years. And you know, you talk about marriage vows, better or worse. Wow, I've not had the worst. She's had everything bad. And he's still with me. And if it wasn't for her, I don't know, gosh, where I'd be. Well, I'd be in a box somewhere. I went and got medical help. And I've made a promise to myself largely that whatever the medical people told me to do, I'd do it. Because I quite clearly couldn't do it myself. I didn't want to. And I've seen psychiatrists, and I've seen psychologists, and I've seen psychiatric nurses, and I've been to psychiatric units, and I've done everything. And over 15 years, I've gone from uh-oh to, oh, hang on. And we lost our home because of me. Now we have a lovely home in the most beautiful part of the world in 15 years. And that's where I think something else is happening. But you're going to say, no, it's not. It's coincidence. Well, okay, I like coincidences then. That's good. But when I play soldiers, whatever is wrong, and now it's Parkinson's and bipolar and an obsessional thought disorder, I can defeat them. And a psychiatrist, no, a psychologist, I've seen a lot of psychiatrists, and I take a lot of tablets. But this psychologist, I've only seen one psychologist, and he was dick good. And he said, whatever it is you're frightened of, write it down 1,000 times. Name it. And you can't. You cannot write it down 1,000 times. Think of a word, beans. Try and think of the word beans. Don't think of anything else. Just think beans, beans, beans 1,000 times. But you can't do it. Because your brain goes, well, no, I'm fed up now. And apparently when you have adrenaline surges, which gives you this anxiety, they can only last 20 minutes physically. So you think they're forever, but they're not. There might be 20 minutes and a bit of a gap, and then another 20 minutes, but they're not forever. So the trick is to make the not forever bits better. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying they got really, for the first time, got into painting figures really nicely. And they suddenly realised after 4 or 5 hours that they'd not had a smoke. They never mention that, do they, when they tell you to buy gum and nicotine replacement? Start painting figures. You'll be that absorbed. And some people paint pictures, don't they? And some people make statues, and some people do embroidery, and some people jog. But we find something. So, first of all, here we go, round up. If you find yourself in a desperate place, 1, don't panic. That's my entire life, has been panic. That's all I do is panic. Tell somebody. There's somebody in your life you can tell. Might be a very, very good family member. My life is a bit like Dante's Inferno with the circles. And there's me in the middle. And in that first circle are the people I trust 100%. And it's my wife, my son and my daughter. That's us. That's all that's in that circle. They're the 3, right? And after that, there's another circle. And after that, in that circle, there are my son and daughter-in-law, as my brother and my 2 brothers. That's all that's in that circle. And then there's another circle that's got my mum in it. That's another story. But these circles get bigger, but they don't get more important. That's the circle, that one, but the bullseye. I can talk to any of the 3 people in that bullseye. And I can be honest. I'm lucky. I say, talk to my wife. I say, look, I need to talk to you. I'm dropping a clanger. I'm having a problem. help. And she goes, stop doing what you're doing and do what I want you to do now. Go, okay. And so you go and you get your medical treatment. I take tablets for the bipolar. They have to mess with them. They have to change them. Sometimes they get better than others. So when it first started, it felt like they just filled my head full of candy floss. So I could feel the manic and the depressed, but I couldn't do anything about it. It was horrible. But no, I don't feel like that anymore. So you get medication, get that right. You go to appointments, you get that right. You listen. You don't listen to people and go, oh, no, I don't like that, I'm not doing it. No, you've got to do it. You've got to trust the people you love. You've got to do the things the medical people tell you to do. You've got to find something, like I've done, to alleviate the issue. In my head, Parkinson's is a big troll and I'm Beowulf. And if you look at my other videos, you will see that as a recurring theme, this idea of a Parkinson's warrior. Bipolar, I've got a two-headed giant. He calls himself the Knuckles Brothers, Septic and Chubby Knuckles. And it's a big giant with two heads. And he's my sort of bipolar giant. One of his heads, Septic, is always depressed. And his other head, Chubby, is always high as a kite. And I throw a dice for which one's in charge. So I've got they used to call it manic depression when I was first diagnosed, bipolar. I've got a manic depressive bipolar giant. And I fight him. And when I get a new pill and it works, I think, oh, that might be an elf legion come as an ally. Oh, there's another pill. Oh, a human group, some dwarfs have come. Fantastic. Talking therapy. Oh, it must be a cavalry regiment's turned up because they're helping me fight this giant. And I turn everything into a game. And then I turn that into a game and I make you look at it and you're thinking, he has got no niche. I don't know what the heck he's talking about. Why does he do all this nonsense? Well, now you've seen. But these games with the unpainted big soldiers helped in 68 and they're still helping now. I'm not going to paint them. I don't want them painted. I want them au naturel, shall we say. Multilingual. I don't know if I should have done this video. I don't know who it's for, really. It's not for me anymore. If you know someone or you are suffering with anything, I hope I entertain you enough to make you feel a bit better for the 20 minutes or so that I'm here making a fool of myself. And if the sum total of my life ends up being that for a few minutes every day I made enough of a fool of myself to make someone who felt horrible feel better, job well done. Ta-da, chuck.